Hello and welcome into BTN's Take 10 podcast. This week's guests are former Michigan basketball star Nik Stauskas and BTN staffers Harold Shelton and Bill Friedman. Let's get into it.
Take a look, listen, and enjoy. Look at here.
With the catch, the finish! Oh, my goodness! What a catch!
Oh,
Energy,
my goodness.
enthusiasm. It's picked off! Selfish! Brilliant!
He's still going. Touchdown!
Get to Nik Stauskas in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsor, Northwestern University's School of Professional Studies. You can build a solid foundation in the strategic, creative, and analytic skills that are essential for success in the business of sports in the master's program in sports administration at Northwestern University. Find out more at sps.northwestern.edu/sports. Now, Nik Stauskas.
I'm very pleased to be joined by former Michigan basketball star, 5-year NBA vet. Played his most recent year of basketball in Spain. It's Nik Stauskas. Nik, how's it going, man?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on today, man.
Thanks for jumping on. Appreciate it. First off, just want to get an update on how you're doing. I know we chatted about a month ago, but I know you're injured in Spain. So how's your rehab coming along and just everything else that's going on in the world? How are you managing it?
Things have been good so far. I mean, as good as they can be, during these crazy times. But yeah, my main focus has just been my rehab. Like I had surgery towards the end of February. So I've just been rehabbing every day. I have kind of like a fitness room set up here at my house. But obviously for me, the toughest thing has been like gym time. Obviously not a lot of gyms are even open, especially in this area right now. I'm in New Jersey where things are still kind of rough. So these are challenging times, but I feel good right now. My rehab's progressed a long way. I'm running and jump again, feeling comfortable. So just trying to, prepare mentally and physically for next season, whenever that's going to be.
All right. Good to hear it. One of the reasons I reached out to you and wanted to have you on is because we're doing a all-decade project, I guess you can call it, at BTN, where there was a panel, 24 people, if anyone hasn't seen it, that has voted on the best basketball players of the previous decade and the best football players, which is going on this week. So last week, the basketball team came out. You were not selected, but you did make your feelings known on an Instagram comment on the BTN Instagram page. I'll just quote it straight from your words here. You said, "I would make one small change, but I'm not biased or anything," after you saw you were left off the 15 or 16 member 3-team selection. So, I know you're just having fun with it. We love that kind of engagement, obviously, but on the other hand, you're probably a competitive guy. And, when you see yourself left off and only one Michigan player made it, Trey Burke, on any of the 3 teams, like, what's your genuine reaction there?
I mean, it's not that big of a deal to me. I was I like to stir the pot a little bit. I thought it was going to be fun to do that. But no, all those players on there are great players. I just felt, if we're judging off of our time at those schools, not post-career, nothing, just at our time in college, I felt like my sophomore year when I was Big Ten Player of the Year, I could compete with any one of those guys. And again, everyone has their opinion. So I respect that. I just felt like, my second year at Michigan, I felt like I was playing at an elite level. And yeah, that's just my opinion. So.
All right. So full disclosure, I was one of the voters. I don't know why they picked me. Like, that should discredit the panel right there. But I did have a vote. And to let you in on the background of what we did for the process, they only had us pick 10 players.
Okay.
And so the 3rd team was a list of guys that people had picked in their top 10. So if, maybe that, I don't know, I don't want to say skewed the voting a little bit, but I do see guys among those 16 players that, like, you were better at basketball than, like, straight up. Like, you had a better pro career and a better college career, like you said. So, you never know when you get those panels. And it's one of the things that we love, right? It's like creating debate. But I would agree with you. I mean, you were probably the biggest snub in the replies when people were complaining, not just from former players, but people definitely agree with you. So I know, that may not make you feel any better, but we appreciate you stirring the pot there.
No, it's all fun and games. And, that's why we debate. Everyone has different opinions.
Absolutely. And, like you said, you were dominant at Michigan, Big Ten Player of the Year, drafted 8th overall by Sacramento, and have, played in your NBA career for mostly rebuilding franchises. So I do want to talk a little bit about your NBA career. Some of those teams, like Kings, like I mentioned, the Sixers, the Cavs. So just, taking stock at right now in, mid-20s, how would you evaluate your NBA career to this point? And was it difficult to kind of get going and get momentum among all those rebuilds that you were a part of?
Yeah, it was a tough transition for sure, especially that, my rookie year with Sacramento. Like, I honestly, I didn't know what I was getting into. And college is a lot different than the NBA, but, certain situations in the NBA are obviously, different than, playoff situations. And like, I look at my rookie year with Sacramento, and like, we went through 3 coaches that first year. And like, it just seemed like everything was so chaotic and different than what I was used to at Michigan, where like, Coach Beilein had this program, everyone bought in, and everyone was like a family. And I remember I got to Sacramento and I was like looking around and just like seeing the chemistry, seeing the vibe of the team. And I'm like, man, this isn't a family at all. Like, no one likes each other. Everyone's like talking behind each other's back. People are getting fired left, right, and center. We're getting blown out by 30 every night. So that was like a huge wake up call for me coming in the league. It was humbling, just like, bam, like you experience that all at once. And like, for me, I had high hopes and high expectations. Like, I'm a guy who, I set the bar high for myself. So I was really disappointed with my rookie year. And then, I get traded to Philly, and, Philly, I would say maybe not as chaotic as, Sacramento was, but, we were not a good team at all. Like, my first year in Philly, we were 10-72. And, as a player, any player who plays, you're not used to losing. All of us, come from high school and colleges where we were competing at the highest level and we're used to winning. So when you get put in that situation where you're night in, night out, getting beat, getting humiliated, it'll take a toll on you, definitely. And, I look over the last 5 years that I played in the NBA, and it was tough because other than my time in Portland, which I only played half a year, I had never really been on a winning team or, winning organization. So there was never it felt like there was never any consistency in the way things are going, because I felt like those organizations, those teams are, scrambling to find something that works. And if it's not working, they keep changing things up. So that was definitely a hard part, but it helped me, like I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about, basketball. I've learned, I feel like I've grown up a lot, throughout that experience. So, now that I'm getting myself back healthy, obviously the goal is to get back to the NBA. And, my dream is still to have a successful NBA career. My dream is still play in the playoffs, compete for championships. I know that's something that I'm capable of doing. And, like I said, I'm a highly motivated guy. So, I'm going to keep chasing that, and, hopefully we get back there.
You mentioned some of those situations. Was there one in particular where, maybe you were traded or things didn't work out that left you wanting more? I saw you play in Philly, and I remember you had a good game, and I know that was part of the whole trust the process thing going on there. And then, you mentioned Portland. I think your first game you had 24 off the bench, and I remember watching that game because I think it was LeBron's Lakers debut. So, which scenario, if you could point to one or two, would you say that was maybe most out of your control that you wish you had more time or a different opportunity?
Man, the one that hurt, big time was getting traded from Portland to Cleveland. Like, that one really hurt, because I had signed the 1-year deal there, and I had started the season so well. Like, the first 2 months of the season, like you said, that opening night, and I kind of carried that in through the first 2 months of the year. I'd been playing so well. And I just didn't think, for me, like I said, I hadn't played on a playoff team. And like, I had this mindset all year, like, I'm going to be competing for something this year. Like, this is going to be the year where, I'm going to play in the playoffs. I'm going to be able to make a name for myself. I'm going to be a part of something special. And when you get blindsided like that, like, there was no heads up, no nothing. It was literally just like, we finished practice one day, and I'm shooting free throws out of side basket, and I hear, "Hey, Nick, can I talk to you?" And I turn around and it's, the GM. And this was like 3 days before trade deadline. And like, right away, I knew that when he pulled me over, he was going to tell me, that he traded me. And that one hurt, because I wanted to see that year through. I wanted the opportunity to play in the playoffs and be a part of something special. And getting traded to Cleveland, it was like, damn, I'm right back to like, you know, the rebuilding, chaotic, everyone for themselves kind of team. And that was tough to deal with, for sure. That was really tough to deal with. And not to mention, at the time, my fiance, she had just moved to Portland with me that year and was enrolled in law school at Oregon. And so like, for me, it wasn't just about myself anymore. I'm like, damn, like my fiance just moved here. She just enrolled in school. Like now I got it. Like we were, you know, it's more than just basketball at that point too. It's just the inconvenience of your life of just like literally picking up your bags mid-season and going. And not only going across country from Oregon to Ohio. So that was a tough one.
Yeah, man, everything's uprooted. That's brutal. Speaking of Cleveland, I was on a Zoom, like I referenced earlier with you, and Coach Beilein was on it a month and a half ago for a different project. And, you know, the chemistry between you guys was obvious. You know, you guys obviously got along, or at least were good at pretending on the Zoom call that you got along. And, you know, you guys both accomplished really great things at Michigan. You both have NBA experience now. So what was your reaction when you heard, having been in Cleveland yourself, that he was going to leave Michigan and try and coach the Cavs in the NBA?
I was excited for him. Like I was excited for him to get that opportunity to coach the NBA because I know it's something that he's thought about for a while. Like I remember after my first year in the NBA, I went back to Michigan for an entire summer. Like I moved back to Ann Arbor, and because I was like 20, 21 years old, you know, I kind of wanted to be with everyone. I wanted to train at the facility still. And I remember I used to sit down with Coach B and we used to go to lunch, and he would tell me, he was like, man, I really want to coach in the NBA. Like, I really want to give it a try one time, but like, you know, the timing's got to be right. I don't know. Like he was thinking about it. And I told him, I'm like, it's, especially after what I experienced in Sacramento that year, like that was fresh in my mind. I know how Coach B likes to, you know, not a control freak, but he likes to have guys that are going to buy into a system. And that's how it works. Everyone needs to buy into a common goal. And I told him, I'm like, it's different there. They're not going to listen to you and buy in the same way that, you know, these 18-year-old kids coming into Michigan will. And but obviously his X's and O's, the basketball part, like the understanding of offense and the way the game works, his knowledge is off the charts. It's more, I told him it was more of like an ego personality thing that you're going to be dealing with once you get to the NBA. Like you have guys making a lot of money. There's entitlement. There's all these different things that aren't necessarily there at Michigan that you don't have to deal with. So, you know, I told him, I warned him like of certain things, but I knew he was still going to chase that dream. Cause I mean, you can't hold someone back. If that's their dream, they want to give it a try, like go for it. But when he signed with Cleveland after had just being there and like seeing how that year ended, I knew it was going to be tough. Like I knew it was going to be really tough. And not that those guys on Cleveland are bad guys by any means. They're all great guys. I just know the type of, you know, like I said, the type of guys that he needs to buy in. I just knew those guys weren't going to give him the energy and the commitment that he wanted and needed to be successful. And it was unfortunate the way it all played out. Like I felt bad for him that, you know, things ended so quickly and he didn't get to see it all the way through. But, you know, I don't think that should, you know, tarnish his image or his career by any means, because he is, you know, to this day, my favorite coach I have ever played for, like hands down. I absolutely, and you said you could see the chemistry. That's like, we're not faking that. Like I truly love him. And I wouldn't be where I am today without him. So, like I said, it sucks to see that, you know, this year played out like that for him, but you know, I still have the most respect for Coach B, and I don't know what he's planning to do with the rest of it, you know, if he's going to go back to coaching or not, but either way, he's had an incredible career no matter where he's been.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously we wish it would have worked out better for him in Cleveland. Now he is on our team, at least for now, on the TV side. So we're happy to have him. So there's a little silver lining there. And you talk about it, you touch on it a little bit, but it is part of the culture. It's one of those things with the NBA culture, just from an outside observer, that, you know, it's kind of a groupthink mentality almost. Like it'll chew you up and spit you out. And if there's an opinion about you, at least in the media, when Beilein left Cleveland, you know, it seemed like there was just this sentiment on Twitter with the, you know, a lot of the NBA Twitter people that, you know, he was totally in over his head. And I disagree with that. Like you said, I think it was a matter of buy-in, and he is capable of coaching at that level. And it's just one of those things that, you know, one of the things I don't necessarily like about NBA Twitter is kind of that groupthink, and I assume that permeates in the locker room as well a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing, looking at it too, that's, I knew was going to be a huge adjustment for Coach B, going back to the NBA thing was, at Michigan, you get to handpick your players. You're recruiting the guys that you want every time. And I knew him stepping into a situation where he's just given, he's given this team, it's tough. Like, like we said, if not everyone buys in, if not everyone gives you that commitment, it's going to be hard to create a winning environment. So, it's unfortunate though, like you said, that the group Twitter, the Twitter basketball world, kind of just write something and then they just run with it. And that becomes the mentality everywhere. Oh, he was in over his head. He couldn't handle, like, it's, those, a lot of those people who, who write that on Twitter, they're spiteful, they're hateful, they're whatever. But, the real people who know basketball know, how brilliant Coach Beilein is and what he brings to the game.
Yeah, and there are positive sides of NBA Twitter. The culture of the league has carried it a long way. And I'm wondering, how much do you get invested just as a pro basketball player in kind of the social media side, especially with the NBA? It's such a thing. It's kind of baked into the league itself. Looking at your personal Twitter account, it doesn't look like you tweet much at all anymore, but, you're obviously active on Instagram at least. So how much do you get wrapped up kind of in the whole social media universe of professional basketball?
Well, I was huge into Twitter before. Like when I was at Michigan, Twitter was like my main source of social media. And even when I got to the NBA, I was heavily on Twitter. And the reason why I stopped was because when I played in Philadelphia, it became too much. Like the year that we were 10-72 in Philadelphia, like I stepped into that, program, like really not knowing what to expect. Like you said, I got traded there and I had no idea what Philly fans were like, especially when the team was losing. So I come in there and like, we lose the first 18 games of the season. And I'm looking on Twitter every day and like all my mentions are Philly fans, like one after another being like, why did we bring you here? Like, get out of Philly. Like everyone hates you. Like just every comment was negative. And, for a certain while you block it out or use it as motivation or whatever, but it came to a certain point in time where like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it got to the point where I'm like, why am I going on Twitter when all I receive and all I see is negative? It's just negativity from everyone. And so it got to the point where Instagram wasn't as bad because it's not like, people comment on your pictures or whatever, but it wasn't the same as Twitter. I had to get off Twitter. I stayed on Instagram, but yeah, to this day, the reason why I don't use Twitter is because of Philly fans. It was rough.
If you ever do come back, that'll be a momentous event. That first tweet you send eventually. I'll be sure to retweet it when you do. And speaking of social media, one of the positives, even though it can be toxic, like you said, is the legend of Sauce Castillo kind of took off. I had forgotten about that until I was looking up some research for this interview. When's the last time someone called you Sauce Castillo? And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, the closed captioning, I believe, like on one of your Sixers games, instead of putting your real name, spit out Sauce Castillo. And that's probably the best possible outcome because like usually if it messes up, it's just gibberish. So that nickname's like legitimately awesome.
Well, yeah, I got lucky that Sauce, that's kind of a cool name. Like I don't mind, but it's funny because when I'm back in Philly or even right now, like I'm in like the Jersey Shore area where a lot of people from Philly go to vacation. To be honest, when people recognize me, I'm only Sauce. I'm not Nik. Like if the like casual, like 22-year-old basketball fan who's walking down the street sees me, he's not gonna be like, what's up, Nik? He'll be like, Sauce. And it's funny, like we laugh about it to this day that people know me by that name because it was literally a closed captioning error during one game. And it just, like you said, with Twitter and social media, when something happens, like people just run with it. And still with me to this day, 6 years later.
Again, could have been so much worse. You came out pretty well on that one. Speaking of some of the research I did, do you know who edited or edits your Wikipedia page? Because it's like probably the most comprehensive page I've ever seen. It's awesome. It was perfect.
I literally have no idea. Like it must be my mom or like a family member or something. Because I remember I saw some stuff and I'm like, how would anyone like know that was a thing? So I have no idea who updates that.
I'm always curious about that. Like who's is like your agent, your mom, maybe the best story ever if your mom's editing your Wikipedia page.
Yeah, my mom's like,
But yeah, so it had like all the details of a lot of your games at Michigan and your pro career. So I do want to talk about Michigan a little more before we wrap up. And I just want to off the top get your favorite moment or something that resonates with you the most when you look back to your time in Michigan, your 2 years there.
oh man, that's a tough. I mean, obviously, playing in that national championship game, my my freshman year was huge. But I think back to my sophomore year, when we won the Big Ten championship outright. We didn't make it to the Final Four. We lost in that Elite Eight, but that year in general, like it was like even more special than that freshman year because no one thought we were going to be that good, and especially after the preseason that we had that year. We lost at Duke, we lost at Arizona, we lost to Charlotte. Like we really didn't have a good preseason. We were unranked coming into the Big Ten season, and for us to like come together and kind of turn things around the way we did in such a short amount of time, and like I kind of found my groove. Glenn and Karis, really stepped up their game, and even we talked before, like Derek Wall and Zach Irvin, Spike, all those guys really elevated their game that year. Jordan Morgan too. And for us to come together, win the Big Ten championship, and then make a run to the Elite Eight, and come that short to going back-to-back Final Fours, like for me that year was so special, and we had so much fun doing it too. That was like the best part about it, was like showing up every day to practice, showing up every day to games. Like there was never, it never felt like work or like, oh man, I wish we were doing something else. Like we truly enjoyed being together all the time on and off the court. And that's what made that group special.
Everyone remembers you for blowing the kiss to the Michigan State fans. Did you also, was it a kiss that you blew to Illinois when you ran off the court at halftime after burying that three in their eye, or what was that?
I don't think I blew a kiss, but I like just stared. I like stared at the student is, what is it, the Orange Crush or whatever they call them?
Yep.
Because they were like doing the USA chant, and when I hit the shot, I just like literally stared at them for like 3 seconds, just like didn't move. But yeah, I like the kiss. To be honest, I think that was the thing that like made that year fun, was like we really had the chip on our shoulder. Like not just me, obviously I showed it a lot by doing those things, but all of us, we had this like chip on our shoulder. We felt like we were being slighted, and like we actually literally had a thing in our locker room where like these were like hashtags were just starting to become a thing, and it was hashtag project feeling very slighted. And that was like our motto heading into the weight room, was every day we were like, yo, we're feeling slighted. We're feeling like no one's showing us love. We're feeling like we're not, getting the credit we deserve. So every time we stepped foot on that floor, we had that chip on our shoulder, and that's what made it fun to go in there in opposing arenas and dominate. So yeah, that, just looking back at that, those are some great times with those teams. Probably the most fun I've ever had playing basketball was that year, I'd say.
Yeah, and I brought up the Illinois moment because you and Coach B were talking about it when we chatted last time, and I was in that Orange Crush student section. It was before I was like doing the media thing. I think we're the same age school-wise, and I will say that was the most eviscerating moment I think I've ever seen in that building. Just with, first of all, I think Illinois was getting beat by like 25 or something. You guys were
we were
clicking.
Not missing that game.
It was nuts, and like it was like the last gasp of the student section trying to get in your head. It was pathetic, and you totally, I mean, the game should have just ended right there because you ripped out pretty much everyone's souls. So that's a fond memory looking back on, and being able to talk with you about now from the other side of things. I do want to ask, since we're kind of on the theme of all decade and reflecting, I saw Michigan actually did this on their social media this week, I think inspired by the BTN one, but they did their all-decade basketball, I believe. So I'm curious, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but we can run through the positions. What would be your starting five of the 2010s? Feel free to include yourself if you want. And we'll just start at the point guard position because Michigan's had some good ones.
All right. So this is for the decade, just for the decade.
It's for 2010s decade.
So Trey at the 1.
Okay.
I got to go with myself at the 2. I'm going to go with Tim Hardaway at the 3. I'm going to put This is tough. Like, I want to be able to put like Mitch in there because when Mitch was going, he was like, he was unbelievable for us. But like, obviously there's Mo. I got to put Mo. I'd put Mo at the 4, and I'd put Mitch at the 5.
It's a pretty intimidating team. And that it kind of goes to show, like we talked about it earlier, it's crazy that you guys only had one guy nominated to this made up team that we just made up. Like, I know, anybody can make up a poll and poll people, but thinking about how many great players you guys had, I went and counted because somebody was trying to slander Beilein in the decade on Twitter. And like, I don't usually mix it up like that, like, especially for a school that wasn't mine. Like, I'm a follower of Michigan basketball, obviously, because it's my job. But this guy was trying to say that that he wouldn't watch because Michigan didn't get elite talent. And I'm like, dude, Michigan had 14 guys in the decade, or 14 guys since Beilein's been there playing the NBA. Like, that's unheard of, and you guys had so much talent.
Yeah, and I gotta say this real quick because I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but I want to give a shout out to my boy Mitch McGarry because not a lot of people know how special he would have been our sophomore year had he not gotten hurt. People don't know the story of what happened that summer. So everyone knows, like, me and Karis stayed behind at school after our freshman year, and we did like this whole Camp Sanderson thing, and we were like working on our body stuff. But that was the first summer that Mitch like was serious about his game, his body, everything, because he had passed up on being a lottery pick. Like, he was a lock to be a lottery pick, and he passed on that to come back to school. So he like finally had this mindset. He was like, hey, I'm coming back to get better and to put myself in a position to be top 5 pick. Like, why not? I'm like, he was that good. And I remember this when we were playing open runs in August before that sophomore season. This is right before he got hurt. I can't make this up. Had he stayed healthy, he would have been the number 1 pick in the draft. He came back, and I'm telling you, he was grabbing rebounds. He was coming down the court like full speed, pulling up from 3, lefty, swish. Next time, getting a steal, coming down, looking this way, throwing a wraparound, like to the other way for a layup. Like, we were watching this in practice. You could see the coaches. They were looking around. They're like, oh, damn, like we're about to be nice this year. And then one thing led to another. Oh, sorry. My dogs are freaking out a little bit.
All good.
One thing led to another, and he ended up hurting his back and missed the season. So, yeah, it was unfortunate that happened.
I mean, I believe it. Just watching him that first year and just the bounce he had and the athleticism mixed with, kind of the smooth jumper and everything in his repertoire was impressive. And he was so young. And, it's always one of those kind of what if stories, but he had a great, great year, obviously. And it's a shame that I'm sure Michigan fans can relate to right now and agree with you, even though they weren't there to see it in that August run. We wish we all could have seen what he would have became. Before we wrap up, Nick, I know you've been super generous with your time. I do want to get a couple of rapid fire fun questions in. I want to start.
It's going to be great.
I want to start with just start with Ann Arbor, the city, because you spent some time there, even when students weren't there, and I'm sure you probably hit every restaurant along the way. And I love, it's like an underrated food city. Like, eating there and just hanging out is awesome. What would you say are your top, like, 2 or 3 restaurants to hit in Ann Arbor?
And I was, when I was there, I was really big into Mr. Spots. That was definitely like a go-to of mine. The Chipotle on campus was like every day I was going there. And then there's that restaurant, like, it's a nicer restaurant. We would go there, like, we were like going on a date or something. We would we'd go to Melange. That was like our place where you'd get like a nice dinner. And then Mongolian steakhouse, the Mongolian grill place where they make make your own bowl. That was at the top of my list as well.
What would be your order from Zingerman's? If you could call it up right now, deliver to Jersey.
You know what's crazy? I've never been to Zingerman's.
For real?
I was there for 2 years, never went.
So, like, that's our stop. If we stop in Ann Arbor for like work, we have to stop there. They kind of order it for everybody. But I can see that. I can relate to that because So I grew up in a college town too. Like I went to Illinois, I told you, but I grew up there as well. And there would be places that people would come into town and be like raving about. And I would just be like, I've never eaten there before just because it's almost too popular. You know, you don't go there as a local. So, but I'm going to expose you for that, you know, never having Zingerman's. I think Michigan fans might be mad.
I know I don't know how that never came about, you know, after 2 years of being there, but I'm like, I really never even tried it.
All right, last round of questions. You're a Mississauga guy, right? You're from Canada. Okay, so we're doing some Canadian rapid fire questions. We'll do 5 of them real quick, and we'll start with, what's another nickname for Toronto besides the 6?
The T-Dot.
Okay. Would you rather have Tim Hortons or your American alternative, like a Starbucks Dunkin' type?
I'd say still Starbucks.
Gonna revoke your citizenship. When you had to type out or like text Chrysler Center, do you spell center with an ER or an RE?
ER. I spell everything American now because I've lived here for like 11 years now, so I've like converted. But all my family, they still spell everything the Canadian way.
I've always kind of liked the RE. It makes it seem like fancier for some reason. I don't know why, but. Okay, 2 Canadians. So you have to pick one: Ryan Reynolds or Ryan Gosling.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Both studs, like absolute studs. I might have to go Gosling, man. He's got the juice. He's got the juice.
And he's from Ontario, so you know you got to go with the hometown guy.
Do you know where in Ontario he's from?
I didn't. London, maybe. I
Okay.
quick scanned it, but I think Reynolds is from Vancouver, so I remember that he wasn't from your neck of the woods. All right, last one. What's a stereotype? You know, not something negative necessarily, but like something about Canadians that Americans think or the rest of the world thinks that's like 100% accurate. That's totally true about Canadians.
I'm so guilty of this. We all like we're so nice. Like we're always like apologizing. Like I do this all the time too. If someone like trips, like, so say I'm like walking by and someone trips me and like they were the one in the wrong, I'll be like, oh, so sorry. Like, because like I made contact and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Whereas like they should have been the one to say, I'm so sorry. But that's just like how Canadians are. I don't know why that's the case, but we're always like apologetic. We're always trying to be nice, I guess. And it's very true. Like, it's just, Canadians are nice people, I'd like to think.
It's like the whole Midwestern thing about saying "ope." Have you heard that when you bump into somebody like the "ope"? It's like
yeah.
And that's like
the A for Canadians. A lot of people do say that. Yeah,
Yeah, watching hockey, that always comes through the broadcast. But you know, you're right. You have been very nice with your time. Appreciate you jumping on, chopping it up a little bit. It's been fun reflecting with you. Best of luck getting healthy. Best of luck as you know, the basketball hopefully returns, getting back in the NBA universe, and looking forward to seeing where you go from here, man.
Yeah, no, it was great talking, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
All right. Thanks once again to Nik for joining the show. Really enjoyed that conversation. Just a very candid and open discussion about, you know, some of the struggles he's had in the NBA, but also some of the successes and the optimism that he has to get back to where he was, and also just really appreciated his insight on Coach Beilein. I thought that was some fascinating stuff, and always obviously enjoy reflecting on his Michigan stardom as well. So I appreciate you, Nik, for that. And we'll move to the second part of our show now. Got a super extended show this week, you know, kind of because we have a holiday weekend coming up, and this will give you some time to kill if you're going on a long drive and taking a short vacation for the holiday weekend, enjoying the long holiday weekend. But definitely have a longer discussion coming up, and Nik's was a pretty lengthy chat as well. But this next portion of the show goes about an hour, 15 minutes, hour 20. And, you know, it's kind of just for all the Big Ten nerds out there and people who really obsess over and enjoy Big Ten sports. And I really enjoyed the conversation we had. I mentioned at the top of the show, we have Harold Shelton on. He is a BTN researcher who's on very, very often, if you've ever listened to the show before, to share his insight on Big Ten football and basketball. And then we had Bill Friedman on as well, who's been on once before. And if you didn't hear that previous episode, Bill is the mastermind behind the BTN Journey Show. He's a senior coordinating producer at BTN and is another just sports savant who can really rattle off moments and memories. So figured I'd get those guys together to align with the theme of the BTN All-Decade Teams that have come out in the last couple of weeks on BTN platforms. Little background, BTN convened a panel to vote on all-decade Big Ten football and basketball teams, kind of like I talked about with Nick earlier in the show. And so Harold and Bill and I touch on that a little bit, but we also get into kind of our own BTN all-decade themes and topics and took a subjective look at the last decade and how we kind of viewed some of the more notable circumstances and happenings and events from our individual lenses. So, less of the individual player votes that Harold and I submitted as part of the panels, but more of things like the best event you attended in person, and event you wish you attended in person the past decade, or the moment that was kind of frozen in time, a singular moment that you remember where you were when it happened, and then some of the more team-oriented things as well, like the best football team of the decade, best basketball team, surprise season. So a lot of fun stuff that we just enjoyed as BTN nerds, as I'll put it affectionately. And Big Ten just consumers of everything that's gone on in the last decade, especially those guys who have worked in sports longer than I have. And we just enjoyed talking. So, listen to all of it, listen to none of it. Doesn't really matter. We enjoyed talking about it and just kind of reflecting on a lot of the storylines and real life events and people that went into the last decade of Big Ten sports. So, I know the decade's been over for 6 months now, but it seems like a good time to kind of do all of this type of discussion and reflect with no sports going on. So hopefully you'll indulge us. It's the Take 10 podcast discussion with Harold Shelton and Bill Friedman, and it starts right now.
Very pleased to be joined by two guests this time, two friends of the show. I want to welcome back Bill Friedman, the senior coordinating producer of BTN Originals, and welcome back a very regularly recurring guest, Harold Shelton, BTN manager of research. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Very
Good,
well.
man.
Very
Glad
well.
to be back.
All right, we'll try to talk over each other the rest of the way. Appreciate you guys jumping on, and it's a good opportunity to have two of the brightest minds at BTN back on the show, because we've had quite the discussion over the last couple weeks, both inside and outside our network with the BTN All-Decade lists that have been released in basketball last week and football this week, both on social media and on our air. So it's been kind of a fun summer project. It's generated a lot of debate. For those who don't know, the lists were put together throughout the spring with a 24-person panel. Harold and myself were on the panel. Bill, I don't know what happened, how they left you out of the equation, but we'll get your input here in just a second. But it's been some fun, summer content. Like I said, we briefly addressed it with Nik Stauskas earlier in the show and talked about some of the omissions from the list or how people would have tweaked it. So I guess we'll just start there. And I don't want to linger too long on the list itself because that's already been decided. We will move forward later in the segment here with some alternate topics about what's happened in the last decade and some of the more memorable moments, teams, and seasons, et cetera. But first, let's just start where we kind of left off with Nik Stauskas, and that's maybe some of the omissions that we noticed. I think it's going to be easier with basketball, to be honest, because that was out last week. There's fewer players. There's tiered teams. And I'll just start with you, Bill. Who did you think among the well-deserving members, who do you think maybe deserve to be included? You don't even have to say who you would leave off, but who do you think would deserve a spot on that 16-member list that we released last week?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me on, guys, and it's great to be with two of the panelists. So clearly experts on the subject matter. For me, one of the things that struck me about the panel, and it's not surprising, about the team, it's not surprising, is many of the nominees had great success as a team as well. And so I turned my attention to a guy whose team maybe didn't have quite as much success, but in my mind, and granted, didn't play the full decade in his full 4-year career in the decade, but I'm going to start with Penn State's Taylor Battle. I mean, a guy who was just the heartbeat of that program from the minute he got on campus till the minute he left. You know, they won an NIT, I believe, while he was there. Harold, correct me if I'm wrong. And, you know, had a great run in the 2011 Big Ten tournament, you know, to get to the NCAA tournament. You know, I believe Taylor was the all-time leading scorer and probably would have been passed this year by Lamar Stevens if the season hadn't been shortened. But still, there's a guy that brought it every night for four years. I like 4-year players. I gravitate towards them. I think in things like this, they deserve a little more consideration. And so I'd start with Taylor.
Yeah, Lamar Stevens, another Penn State guy whose name I saw in the replies as a suggestion from the Penn State fans as somebody who maybe could have been included but was not. Harold, what do you think as far as the hoop side of things go?
Yeah, I thought Lamar Stevens definitely had the resume to make it. But, you know, to Bill's point, you know, it was kind of to the victors go to spoils. In that vein, I thought, you know, our own Robbie Hummel certainly had a chance to make that team. I think people kind of forget how good he really was. I mean, that 2010 Purdue team, like if he doesn't get hurt, they're probably a 1 seed. He was still first team All Big Ten that year. And then he missed the whole year after that and then came back and was first team All Big Ten again in 2012. Almost beat Kansas by himself in NCAA tournament. And that was a Kansas team that went all the way to the national title game. I mean, they literally had to put a triangle and 2 on to try to stop him because he was that good. And the fact that he played so well after those knee injuries really showed what kind of player he really was.
Yeah, Hummel was on the panel, so maybe it's best that he was left off because people would have cried foul. So a little conflict of interest there. No, I agree with those two. You know, what struck me was, and you know, we joked around. Me and Nik Stauskas did a little bit about the selection and how, you know, I was impressed with how good natured he was about it. Like, it's hard to tell sometimes how much this matters to players who were selected, right? Like, we saw a lot of positive feedback from the guys who were selected, but I'm wondering who's out there maybe stewing over the fact they didn't make it. But, you know, it did strike me that there was only one Michigan basketball player selected. That's Trey Burke to the first team. Well-deserving honor for him. But with all the success Michigan basketball had that decade, I would argue is probably the most impressive run just from what they were the decade before. It's striking that they only had one guy on the team. You know, there are plenty of guys I think that could have made a case, including Nik Stauskas. I think Hardaway had an argument as well. And, you know, just them having one guy and Ohio State having 4 didn't necessarily seem right to me. I would have balanced it out a little more. So I just would have probably tried to get a little bit more of an accurate representation of Michigan basketball and how dominant they were that decade. But other than that, no huge gripes with how it turned out. To be fair, I didn't vote for anyone besides Trey Burke to the panel, even though it's a little different. Harold, I know you can speak to this a little bit. How do you think it affected maybe the outcome that we had 10 votes as opposed to voting for a first, second, and third team, and then they took the, I guess, the best of the rest to fill out the third team in the voting process?
Yeah, I think that certainly could have played a part. You wonder if there were enough, you know, third place finishes or third team finishes for a Stauskas or a Hummel. Would that have vaulted, you know, them up? Also, for the people who maybe finished 11th or 12th on the ballot, like if they're actually placed on the third team, maybe it's a little bit different as well. I know there's some cases where like maybe Ethan Happ got left off of the top 10, but he still had enough votes to get in the top 10. And I just wonder, like, if we would have seen, you know, all 3 teams, if there would have been a 1 through 15, how much it would have changed. I think it may be a little. Stauskas definitely would have been on my third team if I had a vote. Robbie Hummel as well. I think those 2 would probably be the 2 that just missed my cut, along with the Penn State guys we mentioned.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, there's a million ways you can slice these type of things, and I want to shout out Mark Carman and the rest of the team for pulling the all-decade process together. I mean, it was a phenomenal job, heavy lift for sure. Getting all these panelists to come on board and submit their votes and doing it during a pandemic. It's been an awesome project to see unfold. So, you know, don't want to come off as critical or anything, but that's part of the fun of all these types of debates. If we get to debate them after the lists come out. Let's talk football a little bit before we move on to some of our speculative or self-created topics. from the past decade. I see some of these positions that are so deep in the Big Ten, and running back especially stands out. The two running backs that made it on, I guess we'll call it the first team. It's not specifically designated the first team, but they did kind of have an all honorable mention second team. And the two running backs, Saquon Barkley made it, and guys like Melvin Gordon. Yeah, Taylor made it, and Melvin Gordon, his predecessor, and Monty Ball were left out. So, just like a deep stable of running backs like Amir Abdullah, Ezekiel Elliott, even Justin Jackson from Northwestern, Le'Veon Bell, all these guys had a case. Turns out Jonathan Taylor, like you mentioned, and Saquon were the two, I think, deserving nominees. So, Bill, what do you think as far as what you've seen from football, and maybe a guy or two that you would make a case for?
Yeah, I mean, I'd start where you start, Alex. I think the running back position speaks to, the style of football that was prevalent in the Big Ten for much of the decade. I think it's started to change a little bit, and the offenses have opened up in the last few years. But, I mean, I think you could almost do an all-decade Wisconsin running backs team, let alone just the all-decade. I mean, obviously JT was three basically 2,000-yard seasons. I think one year was a little short, Harold. That's tough to beat. But in terms of, right, do you ask yourself the question, if I had to hand the ball off to one guy, who would it be? Might be Melvin Gordon for me. His just explosiveness, the number of long runs he was able to generate. Boy, he was something. That one, probably the 2 years he was the featured back, the 408-yard game against Nebraska is something I'll never forget. And I think maybe, I know he's maybe mentioned as a second team, but I guess maybe I'm saying maybe he should have been on the team. That's probably where I'd start is with Melvin. Amazing player.
It's so hard to pick only two, a position like running back, and I believe wide receiver was the same way. You can only pick two, but it was more in the running back sense that guys that easily had a case for the first team, that jumped out at me more as opposed to wide receiver. Not as many wide receiver names jumped out at me from the last decade. Harold, what do you think? Were any omissions or any just splitting hair type scenarios that jumped out to you as you were voting and then seeing the results?
Yeah, I could completely piggyback off of Friedman here. If this would have happened before 2019, I was fully prepared to go Saquon and Melvin. And then when you add another 2,000-yard season and you add another Doak Walker award, and you add the fact that he had 6,000 yards in 3 seasons and became like the first back to ever do that in 3 seasons, like I kind of forced my hand there a little bit, but I think people kind of forget how great Melvin Gordon was. I mean, he almost had 2,600 yards in his season without much of a passing game. Like 2,600 yards, capped it against Auburn, over 200 yards there. Marcus Mariota was just so special that he won the Heisman that year and Melvin finished second. But, he still won a Doak. And even as a junior, he still ran for, say, 1,600 yards. I mean, the fact that when he became the featured guy, he had 4,200 yards, roughly in those 2 seasons. I mean, that dude was special. And he's been productive in the league.
He might have had more chances, too, if he wasn't behind James White and Monty Ball his first year, too. I mean, he didn't even really get a lot of carries that year. I mean, I'll think back to the Big Ten championship game. I think it was 9 for 225 or something that game. I mean, he didn't even get 9 carries a game. Like, what if he had a full season there? Would we be thinking differently? JT had the advantage that when they came in, there really wasn't a lot of competition at the position. I mean, he was going up against 2 guys that played in the NFL.
Yeah, we just talked about it, Bill. You were on that Zoom call that Monty Ball was on. We were watching that game that you mentioned. And Monty Ball said when Melvin Gordon had one of those big runs, he's like, that's when he knew that stable of running backs and, tradition there would be okay and in good hands. So, we've named some players that we have really enjoyed watching already. And I do want to get into some of the subjective categories that we put together here, this discussion. So this has nothing to do with really any of the official all-decade results and polls that we've released at BTN the last couple of weeks, but it's stuff that we've made up, Alex, Harold, and Bill, and we're going to offer our very subjective opinions on here. And I'll start with staking on the player track. Which player, guys, have you enjoyed watching the most in each sport? I'll start with you, Harold. Start with basketball.
For me, over the last decade, I'd probably say it's Denzel. just because you didn't really know what to expect. First couple of years, it was just a lot of flashy passes. I mean, he could do other stuff, but when the ball was in his hands, whether he was throwing it off the glass to a teammate, whether it was a no-look pass to somebody else, he was, always a guy who had flash and had flair about him. And then when he became the main guy, you saw how good he became and how good they became. Even when he got hurt, during the season, Michigan State really struggled without him. He comes back and, they roll through the rest of the season and win the Big Ten tournament. And it's a guy who averaged 19, 7, and 7 as a senior and, multiple triple doubles. I was at that Kansas game when he kind of, made that statement to start the year. And, that was just a really, really fun team to watch. So I would go with him.
I thought you were going to say Cassius Winston, and we'd have to double up. And I picked Cassius personally because this is my 4th basketball season at BTN just this past year. So I kind of saw Cassius come up as I was kind of learning the ropes of the job, and also just kind of progressing just like he did as far as seeing a lot of Big Ten basketball. So he was probably my favorite player to watch just because he got the most out of his ability and was just kind of a universally beloved guy, even aside or regardless of all of the off-court circumstances that surround him. Obviously, the death of his brother was a terrible tragedy in the last calendar year, and it was inspiring to see him, move past, maybe not move past, but deal with that in a admirable way. So, that's all kind of baked into the Cassius Winston experience, and sad to see him go, but I'm excited to see what he has in store for us at the next level. Bill, how about you? Who was your favorite player of the decade to watch?
Well, from a basketball standpoint, again, I'm going to be a little contrarian here. I'm just a big fan of like kind of old-fashioned basketball skills, high basketball IQ. And one guy that stuck out for me, and I'll tell you a quote that sums it up, is E'Twaun Moore from Purdue. And he kind of had like that old man game as a young man. He wasn't going to dunk over you, wasn't going to blow by you, but he just knew how to play the game. You could count on him as consistent, dependable. I remember we did a piece on him, and Matt Painter said he's going to play for 10 years in the league. And he knew, at that time, like nobody was thinking of drafting E'Twaun Moore. And here we are 10 years later, and E'Twaun Moore is still in the league. And I don't know, I just love a guy like that that every night, he's 17 to 20. He's not afraid to take the big shot. He can make his teammates better. He shows up, plays hurt. Just a guy I really came to admire through my time. And then on the football side, I'll stay in the same city. Rondale Moore. I mean, you talk about electric. What that guy did as a true freshman at his size. And I just feel like I started watching Purdue games start to finish because I just wanted to see Rondale Moore, touch the ball. And we got to know him pretty well. We actually did a training camp show that's fall. So we saw it from the beginning. We were at practice, and this guy was lighting it up. And I was like, okay, well, let's see how that translates. It translated. And that first game against Northwestern, wow, what an entrance. And what a shame last year that he just wasn't able to be healthy. But I'm really looking forward to seeing him this year. And that's a guy for me that, I think was exciting for me to watch every game.
How about you, H?
Yeah, Saquon Barkley for me. I know that's not really breaking news or anything, but I was a guy who he did a whole lot of stuff. You're like, man, how do you do that? Like, it was just, the fact that he could hurdle a guy, land on his feet perfectly and make another move, or, he put his foot in the ground and it looks like he's about to tear his ACL and somehow he bounces away and runs by some other people. And he always had a flair for the dramatic on the big run too, whether it's the Michigan game where he breaks it for 80 to start, or the USC Rose Bowl where he cuts it back. And he always did this thing with his arm whenever he would get going, and he he kind of had that helicopter thing going. And once he started turning it up, he got an open field, it was over. And so that was a guy who he was just really, really excited. Whether he was carrying it or whether he was out as a receiver making big plays, he could do it all.
Yeah, Saquon's mine as well. And you'll probably sense a theme as we go along here. I mentioned I've not been watching Big Ten sports as closely for as long as you guys have. I've always, being a follower of Illinois sports growing up, I would see guys come through and play U of I, but until 2016, I was not consuming all the sports obsessively like I am now. So yeah, Saquon's like really the first guy that seemed larger than life that I quote covered. He, being close to him at a practice, like it was insane. The Saquads with his legs and like his calves, it was just like superhuman. So that's all, aside from what he did in the actual field, if I thought the Heisman was a lock for him, it would have been 17 when he took the kickoff back against Ohio State in the horseshoe. And, they ultimately lost that game. But it was just one of those things that it seemed like he was commanding the nation's attention. And he was, must-see TV. Was that 17? Am I right about that, Harold?
Yeah, and if they win that game, Alex, if they win that game at Ohio State that they lost 39-38, and if their O-line doesn't get injured as badly as it did that game, he probably does win the Heisman.
Yeah,
they just weren't the same after that because they lost a couple linemen in the middle of that game, and they never found their stride again.
Those Penn State Ohio State games are crazy, and this isn't a category, but Penn State seems like kind of the what if team of the decade. They're always so close, and they're always talented enough to be a college football playoff team, but they just could never quite break through, even though they did win the Big Ten in 2016. So let's transition now to the best football team of the decade. I know we had a national title winner in 14, but I'm going to go with the Ohio State 2019 team, just as far as the dominance and the overall talent spread across the field. I still think they got jobbed in the Clemson game. And, it was such a thrilling game. They lost to one of the all-time, great called dynasties in college football with what Clemson's put together, even though they did go on to lose to LSU. Ohio State 2019 to me, I haven't seen dominance like that from a college football team, at least in the Big Ten in quite a while. Harold, what do you got?
Wholeheartedly agree, 100%. I'd say leading into 2019, it actually would have been probably the 2013 Michigan State team. But this team, every win they had was by double digits. They were killing everybody. The fact that they trailed by as much as they did against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game and still wound up winning by 13 and taking their foot off the gas at the end to do so. It's so much top-end talent. Just look, they had two guys drafted in the top three, both on defense. You probably got the Heisman favorite coming back in Justin Fields. You had a 2,000-yard rusher in J.K. Dobbins. You got another first-round corner waiting in the wings in Shaun Wade. They were just completely loaded, and it showed on the field, and they took no mercy. And, teams that, we thought were pretty good, they really didn't have much of an issue, and I think they got completely jobbed against Clemson. They would have definitely given LSU a game, might have even won. Really upset we didn't get to see that matchup.
Bill, we going 3 for 3?
Well, I'm kind of going to acknowledge that this question should probably read, who is the best non-24 or 2019 Ohio State team? And Harold brought it up, and that's where I was going to go was the 2013 Spartans. It was a team that as the season wore on got better, and was really clicking on all cylinders, obviously beating, gave Urban Meyer's first loss in the Big Ten, I believe, Harold, if that's not mistaken. And being on the field for that game, they handled a really, really talented Ohio State team that had a lot of ballers on it too. And went out to the Rose Bowl, beat a good Stanford team. And I just thought that they had kind of everything, including excellent coaching. And I think that was maybe, one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen was that 2013 Spartan team. So, but I don't think I wouldn't take that against either of the Ohio State teams. So all you Columbus fanatics, you don't have to come at me. I'm not on Twitter anyway, so you can't. But it's one of those things like, 2014 or 2019, those were really amazing teams in the Big Ten for sure from Ohio State.
All right, I wonder if we're going to concur on hoops as well, because the Wisconsin 2015 team that, again, was so close to winning it all. They ended the Kentucky 37 and done run. So talented. They had the all-decade player of the decade that we named, Frank Kaminsky, and such a exciting and talented supporting cast with Decker and Gosser and Koenig and Hayes and all these guys. Harold, what do you think? You think they were the best hoops team of the decade? It's the ultimate what if team for me. Just if they could have held that 9-point lead over Duke in the national championship game, and I'm sure it kills Badger fans that was in the second half too.
Yeah, I tried to look elsewhere because I like being a contrarian, but I couldn't. I think that 2015 team was really good because I can appreciate dominance, And that was a team that was expected to be really good from the start, coming off the Final Four the year before, stayed in the top 10 the entire year, won the Big Ten by 2 games, won the Big Ten tournament, was a 1 seed, beat a couple 1 seeds along the way, or beat a 2 seed and a 1 seed in terms of Arizona and Elite Eight, and then ending Kentucky's undefeated season. And I feel like they were the only team in the country that would have beaten Kentucky that year. I don't think Duke would have done it. And so the fact that, you had a lead guy in Kaminsky who, won every National Player of the Year award. You had another pro in Sam Decker. You had really good role players, really good depth. That team was just really well-rounded, and they got an unfavorable whistle in the second half, which normally doesn't happen to them. But they got the short end of the stick in that second half and kind of ran out of gas late.
Maybe in Madison it doesn't, but when you're going against Duke, I think that kind of counterbalances it. At
5 on 8. 5 on 8, always 5 on 8. But I agree that I think probably if you held my feet over the fire, I'd pick that team. But I think you put a pretty good Final Four together of the 2015 Badgers, the Michigan team that lost to Louisville. Was that 2014, Harold?
13.
13,
excuse me. The Mo Wagner team that made it all the way to the final. And I'd even throw in the Michigan State Final Four team that beat Zion Williamson and Duke. That was a really good team, and I'd love to see how that team would have played if Cassius was at full strength. I think he was a little worn down by that time of the year. You put those 4 teams on, let's go Friday, Sunday and see what happens. People forget that was a great Wisconsin team. They were down 7, 8 points to the Michigan State team in the second half in the Big Ten championship game. Needed overtime to win that game. So they weren't a juggernaut. They were very consistent and very good. But I think some of those other teams that I mentioned could give them a run. There's even that Ohio State team in Sullinger's freshman year. That was a damn good team too, and just kind of ran out of steam at the wrong time. But
and the thing is, I would say Michigan 2013 was clearly above the 2018 edition. 2018 had a pretty favorable road to the Final Four. But what's crazy, about the Wisconsin teams, it all came together with upperclassmen at the right time, pretty much. And with the Michigan 2013 team, that didn't necessarily happen. You had Stauskas was a freshman, McGarry was a freshman.
Burke was sophomore.
Levert was young. So imagine if those guys had aligned at a different time or stuck around a little longer. I think that talent level on that team remains some of the scariest. Still they had Horford, I believe, on that team, and Walton as a young point guard. Or was Walton the next year?
No, Walton was the next year.
Burke was the star. He was the National Player of the Year. So he's the
Glenn Robinson the third. You're missing.
Yeah, just the talent.
Mitch McGarry.
Insane.
They had a lot of ballers. Jordan Morgan was a good role player.
Nick just said it on the podcast. He was saying, and he claims he never had revealed this before to any media, but how good McGarry looked before getting hurt his sophomore year. And he thinks he would have been the number 1 pick in the upcoming NBA draft in 2014 if he would have been able to be healthy his sophomore year. So I thought that was interesting. For sure. All right, let's talk about not the dominant teams necessarily, but shift gears to the biggest surprise team and season of the decade. So these could be surprise teams, but it has to be boiled down to a season by this category's boundaries here. And I'm curious, Bill, what you think. You have a deeper memory and vault than I do when it comes to this stuff. So for basketball, let's just run through both basketball and football for you. What do you got on both fronts?
Well, I like to start on the football side of the equation, if that's all right. And
sure.
You don't have to go too far in the memory banks for me. I remember vividly sitting in our programming meetings trying to predict our football picks last year, and we kept saying, it's conceivable that Minnesota could be 8-0 going into that Penn State game. And who knows what would happen? They'll probably get killed. Well, let me tell you, that was a surprise team to me. I think everybody thought Coach Fleck was moving the program forward. But that was really a quantum leap last year. 11-2, knock off a pretty good SEC Auburn team in whatever bowl game they were playing in Florida. I forget which one it was. And, and just the amount of talent that emerged on that team. For me, that's my surprise football team for sure. Harold, I'll kick it over to you because I got to think about my basketball team.
So football-wise, they've kind of already been mentioned, but I think it was that 2013 Michigan State team. It was coming off a year where they went 7-6 the year before, lost a bunch of close games. Had no idea who the quarterback was going to be. The fact that, Shalik Calhoun was outscoring the offense through the first 2 weeks. They really had no idea, no identity of what they were. Connor Cook catches fire in the Iowa game, and they kind of take off from there. But they don't even get ranked until like the Michigan game in late October, early November, and they go from in the 20s all the way up to number 4 at the end of the Big Ten championship game. And they're a big underdog against Ohio State, big underdog against Stanford. They wind up beating them both. They're 13-1, and you kind of wonder if the playoff was a year earlier, what would have happened. I mean, they would have been in it.
Good
but
point.
You wonder, could they have been a team that, done some damage against Auburn or Florida State? I definitely would have loved to see it.
And I'll give you my hoops. I'm going to forget the year, Harold. I need your help. But it was the year that Nebraska made the tournament with Coach Miles.
Oh, yeah.
That was the team that, we were like, who? Like, we hadn't heard – because he had a bunch of transfers like Teran Petway and what was the guy?
Siobhan Shields.
Well, Siobhan was there, but
And
he was a
Walter
recruit. Pitchford was the guy I was thinking of. And, I mean, they didn't get off to a great start. And then I think they won up at Michigan State at some point. And that was kind of when I was like, man, they're actually pretty good. And, that was a fun team. They had that great win against Wisconsin towards the end of the year.
No sit Sunday.
No sit Sunday, packed house at the vault. Coach Miles was, obviously now he's our teammate, but what a fun guy to cover, certainly from the journey perspective. We're in every locker room and huddle we could ever imagine. It was great. And, it's a team that didn't get a great whistle against Baylor. Ask Coach Miles about it. He'll be happy to tell you. And, but that was a team that, like, in my wildest dreams, never would have seen them make it. And I'd say honorable mention was the Darius Morris-led Michigan team that was 1-6 in the Big Ten and, was a shot away from the Elite Eight, I think. Right, Harold? Did they make it? They made it Sweet 16?
It was second round, but they were a shot away from
the Sweet 16. That's right. But
those guys.
at the end of that year, the Darius Morris just had one of those years, and he was terrific. And I give them my honorable mention. But Nebraska tournament team, that's my surprise basketball team.
Yeah, that Nebraska team, that's a good pick because I know they were like 9-9 at one point a year, and I think 11-10, and they wound up going on this crazy run. And that Wisconsin game was the final game of
Sunday.
The Big Ten
That's
season.
right. Yeah.
And they wind up winning and clinching a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. And we're kind of like, hey, they might make it regardless of what happens in Indy. And even though they lost their first game in Indy, they still made it, and that was such a huge deal. That was a really, really fun team. I think for my pick would be the 2018 Michigan team. Because, at that point, Derek Walton was gone. They had just come off the crazy run off of the Big Ten tournament the year before. They're a 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They wind up repeating. They take over the Garden. And they wind up going all the way up to a 3 seed. They need the crazy shot to beat Houston from Jordan Poole. And from there,
That's right.
Got all the way to the title game. And I don't know how many people really thought, after losing your leader like that in Walton, that they would get all the way back, to the title game. And so, just a great job by John Beilein. I know they still, they had a favorable run, but a lot of teams get favorable runs and don't take advantage of it. And they certainly did. And so, you got to tip my cap to, Mo Wagner and guys like that who got it done.
It's a great call.
Yeah, agreed on, first of all, Minnesota 2019 football. I thought they were a year away from maybe being an Indy contender, and they probably should have made it to Indy. Kind of fell apart at the end there. So football, in agreement with you, Bill. But basketball, as you guys were talking, just some seasons started popping up because I struggled too at first to think of some candidates. But then seasons, where teams kind of came out of nowhere, or came off a bad year, started with a new coach that jumped out in my mind. So I'll go chronological order here. My freshman year of college, when Illinois came off of Bruce Weber, their first year under John Gross, turned out that was the peak of the John Gross era. Didn't see that one coming. But they had a really exciting, great year.
They did.
Beat number 1 Indiana, beat a top 10 Gonzaga team on the road. And
beat Miami in that tournament.
Yeah, lost a lottery pick, and Myers Leonard probably should have beat Miami, like you said, Harold. And then it was all downhill from there. But that was a fun season. Moving forward, kind of sticking on the theme with John Gross's buddy, Chris Holtman, his first year at Ohio State. Did not see that coming at all.
No.
Took over super late. Did not know that Keita Bates-Diop would be a Big Ten Player of the Year caliber player, even though we knew him and Jay Sean Tate were good players. So that was a great job by him. And then same year, Michigan, like you said, didn't think they were a national title caliber team. Earlier in the year, I'm pretty sure they didn't get off to a great start. Nope. They were struggling with some pretty mediocre non-conference opponents at home, if I remember correctly. But like you said, really came together as the postseason got going. Their Big Ten tournament success was ridiculous, like you said, Harold. And then just this past year, Rutgers being a tournament team, with year 3 of Steve Pikiell. I thought they would be a year away just going into the season, but it became clear pretty quickly that they were deeper than we had probably thought going into the season, and that it was something that had staying power. So excited to see them officially get back, most likely to the NCAA tournament in 21. But they were a fun team to watch. And go ahead.
I'll throw one more out at you, and that's the Purdue team from 2019. Mm-hmm. Losing the 4 seniors from the year before. All they had back was Carson Edwards and a bunch of role players. And that team, they should have been in the Final Four. Let's just say it.
And not only that,
let's just say it.
Looked like crap in the Big Ten tournament game against Minnesota, and then just ripped off that incredible run. Yep. But I was going to say, Rutgers, as we move on to the next topic, and it's the best event you've attended in person of the decade. Rutgers, honestly, basketball has given me a couple of memorable ones, especially the Purdue-Rutgers game when Rutgers was still not very good in Pikiell's first year at Madison Square Garden, the Big Ten tournament in 2018. So that's kind of up there as a sneaky honorable mention, but I'm interested to hear from you guys before I get into, my official picks. Harold, I know you and I don't get to all that many games. A lot of times we're in the office and it's kind of reserved for postseason or bigger events, but what's a event you attended in person this decade that really sticks out to you for some reason?
We'll go back to December 7th, 2013. Michigan State beating Ohio State in Indy. It was my first year at BTN. So I kind of came at the right time to see how everything kind of came together for them. 2 years prior, I was all ready to go to the Rose Bowl. They had a fourth quarter lead against Wisconsin, kind of saw it slip away. Me and several of my Michigan State friends were in bad shape there for a while. You kind of wonder if that's your chance, and if you get another chance at it, a program like Michigan State, especially at that time, it's like, man, that might have been it. I don't know if we're going to get back. And so to be there, to see the crowd be fully charged up, 65,000 people, mostly Ohio State fans. Most people thought Ohio State would win the game. The wild swings, a 17-0 lead. Ohio State comes back, scores 24 straight. Michigan State, finishes it off with the final 17. And I'll still remember Langford splitting the safeties and running in the end zone. And I was on the Michigan State sideline at the time and just seeing them go crazy, and it just kind of just waiting for Ohio State to get stopped in the final 2 minutes after that, and seeing the crazy celebration. I'll never, ever forget that.
Remember Izzo brought the basketball team that day.
Yep.
Remember they were in the crowd too.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun moment.
A little background. Bill gets to more regular season and overall probably just more events than Harold and I. He goes with the BTN Journey crew to I guess, senior coordinating, produce what's going on the ground there and run the show. So, Bill, I was going to guess that yours was when Minnesota beat Purdue, and you were right there when the fan flipped off Matt Harms as maybe your most memorable one. But you go ahead and tell me what's your best event you attended.
That was a good one. I've lived a charmed life for the last 10 years, right? I mean, I've been to every Big Ten football championship game and every Big Ten tournament since 2010. I mean, obviously football champ game since 2011, and so many great moments. But I'm going to go again back to this year. I was at the Minnesota Penn State game at Minnesota this year, and it was, I think what differentiated that one for me was, when you go to a game at a team that's had success in their sport for a long time, there's an expectation. Wisconsin's always been good at basketball. I've seen some great Wisconsin games. Michigan State, same thing, football. Minnesota, this was so new to them. And to see that place, having been to that place when it hasn't been full, to see that place full, to be there the night before and feel the buzz in the city, to be on the sideline, first play of the game or first drive of the game for Minnesota. They hit Bateman for the long touchdown. The place erupts. And then the field storm was unlike anything I had ever experienced. And as you said, I did see Matt Harms get flicked off by the Minnesota fan. And I mean, those are crazy, but people were literally jumping down 8-foot walls, like doing a forward roll and then popping up and like running into me. I had a little handy cam that was trying to get some reaction shots. And we were on the field forever. There was, people were chanting they hated Iowa. I didn't understand why, but they did. And it was just a really great, fun environment for Minnesota. So that one, it was a great game. Penn State almost came back and won that game at the end.
So Minnesota fans are going to want to get you to more games. You're like the Minnesota version of those storm chaser guys that try and film themselves getting in the middle of the court storms.
Well, I mean, now that you've done it, now that they're trying to be a have and not a have not, they don't need my good luck charm anymore. So they've earned it. But that was a great game. That was the weather wasn't too bad. It was sunny and kind of crisp, and it's what Big Ten football should be.
Right. So Harold and I do generally, correct me if I'm wrong, Harold, but we get to the Big Ten tournament games for the most part and the Big Ten championships. So those are similar to Bill as far as some of the caliber of events we attend. But, even though you listed this as an event, Bill, when you sent me this particular topic, and, overall event-wise, I would say the 2018 Big Ten tournament at Madison Square Garden was at the top, just because every game pretty much, the exception of a few, was electric. Like the Michigan State one on Saturday semifinal sticks out as just being awesome with so many alumni in that area. And then I mentioned the Rutgers Purdue one on the Friday night earlier.
Rutgers Indiana on Thursday was a great game.
Yeah, and just that event, especially with all the criticism it was getting beforehand, and for it to not only meet those low expectations but exceed, I think, any high expectations that people had for it, was awesome to see. As far as a game that I wasn't even covering, actually, this is just one that I was at. I was freshman back to that Illinois basketball season in 2012-13 when they beat Indiana. I was a student at the time, so ran on the court for that one. And again, like that was, my first year thinking that this is how it's going to be, right? Like you get to storm the court and celebrate being number one. And for them to do that against like Victor Oladipo's team and Cody Zeller and a team they had no business really beating. And, kind of doing it in a weird way. The game was pretty much over. They were down 10 points, I think, with like 5 minutes or something. They just kind of had one last burst and a flurry, and all of a sudden you're, storming the court and partying. And, I think it was like a Thursday night or something, and it was just an awesome experience. And then the last one is even though it came in a loss, got to bring that game up again, the Ohio State Clemson Fiesta Bowl. Just an unbelievable game, the swings that happened in that game, and seeing those two great teams in my first bowl game that I've ever been to in this past year was just a crazy experience. So there's plenty of games that I wish I attended over the years that I wonder what it was like to be there. So that can be our next topic of discussion. Bill, what's the best event or the craziest event that you were not at that you look back and kick yourself for not being at, or just wish you could have been there in general?
That's a good question. Event I wish I was at that I wasn't.
And if you don't have one off the top of your head, I can go to Harold.
Why don't you start with Harold? Let me give that. Let me noodle that a little bit.
All
right. For me, I would go kind of off the board here. I'm going to go 2015 Elite Eight versus Louisville for Michigan State. And it's a really, really personal decision because my dad died earlier in the year, and his funeral was the same day Michigan State lost at home to Illinois. It was like, early February. And they were out. I think they played Northwestern the next game, and they were first four out, like in all the projections. Like they weren't even projected to be in a tournament. So they make a run all the way, they get to the Big Ten championship game, lose to Wisconsin. You're like, dang, like that could have been a nice chance to get a banner of some sort to kind of, remember the season. But then you see the draw and you're like, okay, well, it's somewhat manageable, but, you're a 7 seed. You kind of want to have some limited expectations. But they beat Georgia, and they upset Virginia, and they upset Oklahoma. And so I've got friends in Connecticut because the game's in Syracuse. So I've got friends in Connecticut that are Michigan State guys, and they're like, hey, is there a way, you can try to get me tickets and this and that? And so a few of them were able to make the drive and go up there. And I never heard like Michigan State fans in Syracuse like that. I know we got a bunch in the Garden, but like they really, really traveled to Syracuse. And I remember Rick Pitino was kind of surprised of like, where do these Michigan State fans come from? I'm not used to this. And so the fact that they were down big and it kind of looked like, it was a good run, but they come all the way back and it looked like they had a game won, but they have to go to overtime instead. And they finally get through it and they win the game. My friends are going crazy and telling me about it. And then you see Denzel Valentine like run up in the crowd, hug his dad, and both just lose it. And it was just like a really, really like emotional, personal moment for me. So that was I'll always wish I was there for that, but I was glad I was able to live through my friends with that.
Well, I'll give Bill a little more time, and I don't have one as nearly as sentimental as that, and I almost feel bad following up with one that's kind of meaningless. But I do wish I was at the Kentucky-Wisconsin Final Four game in 2015. I think that would have been in Indy. Nice brag, Bill. I wish I would have been there, just to see an undefeated team that was like 37-0 go down like that, especially just looking at how talented that team was and both teams really, just to see them in college out there running, it would have been just an awesome experience. And then being in Indy, a town that Wisconsin fans know really well, would have been fun, I'm sure, just to soak in the whole experience. And then, any Wisconsin fans listening and are fondly remembering that, for my football version, I'm going to flip it on them. I wish I would have been at the Wisconsin-Illinois football game this past year. I've been at the court storming, like I mentioned, in 2013. I never thought I would see a field storming at that stadium, just because of the logistics of it. Like the student section is 30 feet off the ground, so I never thought I'd see something like that again. But it hurt a little bit not to be there for what was probably, I don't know if Harold has the numbers handy, but probably the biggest upset as far as point spread goes in the decade is Illinois was 30-point underdog. So that's just a significant game looking back as far as perspective goes in the decade. So Bill, I hope you had enough time to think about one or two here that you could have been at, but we're not.
See, I needed the extra time because I didn't go to a Big Ten school, so I don't have the emotional attachment the way you guys do to your alma maters. I must say I'm jealous. I wish I had that, but I don't. But for me, it was October 22nd, 2016. Whiteout, Penn State, Grant Haley returns the fumble. I would have just loved to have been on the field for that moment and just heard the roar of the crowd. Now, that night I was in the last row of Wrigley Field for Game 6 of the Cubs-Dodgers, so I'm not complaining. But that I just remember checking my phone like, oh, my God, Penn State took the lead. And then I'm like, I got to get back to the baseball game. And then I found out how it happened. So, but had the schedules not conflicted that night, I would have loved to have gone to that whiteout game, night game. There's really, I've been around the league and you're choosing between, different kinds of ice cream for which place has the best environment. But Penn State whiteout at night, it's tough to beat.
Yeah, that Game 6, Bill. I'd probably lived in Chicago for like 6 weeks, and as you know, that was the absolute madhouse of a scene. I was not at the game, but we ran like 8th inning out of my apartment down to Wrigley Field to be there when they finally won. And I think that night was more fun than, as far as a celebration goes, than when they won the World Series, because that was Saturday night and the World Series night was a Wednesday, and the scene was just a little, obviously being at home, quite a bit better on the ground there.
Single best sports night of my life. Period. Better than winning the World Series.
It was a scene for sure, and I'm sure Bill and I celebrated in similar way. I'm sure we were at the same bars afterwards.
Maybe. Who knows?
All right. As we wind down a little bit here, I'm curious, Bill, especially on your end with this one, because you interviewed quite a few athletes, and I have, I guess, as well, just for the podcast over the years. But what is your favorite interviewee of the decade? It could be a player, coach, anybody you've enjoyed talking to, and why?
I'll give you a couple. Player-wise, I start and end with Draymond Green. Honest, candid, has a great way of expressing his thoughts, not afraid to say what's on his mind, backs it up, friendly, going to be a star in the television business when he decides to hang it up. Coach, I always love being around. I mean, we're just blessed to have so many great coaches. Tim Miles, great to be around. Tom Izzo, John Beilein, Pat Fitzgerald, so many. It's hard to say. We're blessed with having really wonderful coaches who are great interviews in this conference. But at the player side, starts and ends with Draymond Green for me.
Harold, I know you don't do many interviews one-on-one, but who have you enjoyed either coming in contact with yourself or just observing as a employee at the network over the years and seeing so many people on our air?
It's kind of hard to top Tim Miles just because you didn't really know what he was going to say, and he was always trying to find a way to make you laugh. He, especially at those like media day press conferences, like he'd always open up, kind of about how rough of a night he had the night before, and he was still, sharp as could be, and he kind of livened those up because those could be, very formulaic after a while, but like he always found a way to make those fun. And from the player standpoint, I'm kind of cheated a little bit and say just that entire 2015 Wisconsin team, I think those press conferences they had during the NCAA tournament like wound up being must-see TV because they were so ridiculous together, and you can just see the team chemistry that they had. They were able to kind of bounce everything off of each other, complete goofballs led by Kaminsky and
Nigel.
Nigel. And they just kind of, all followed their lead. And we got to see it all the way through the title game because they were so good. So they were able to back it up on the court. And, I just kind of like things that are fun in settings that don't necessarily have to be. And so the fact that they were able to make them light, I think was fun for me.
Yeah, for me personally, one of the best interviews that's stuck out to me as far as just an overall enjoyment and like engagement on my end, as far as listening to what the guests had to say, was Amir Abdullah. Mm-hmm. And it's actually an interesting story. So now like we have all this professional podcast equipment and we're like 3 years into this thing and we've got kind of a well-oiled machine going now. But when I interviewed Amir, I think it was within the first year of me doing the podcast, and the technology was not as sophisticated or widespread back then, and I was doing it kind of in a bootleg garage band fashion. And this is the only interview where this has really happened, but the entire thing got deleted before I even got to post it. It just didn't record. So here I come out of like probably one of the best interviews that I've heard as far as the subject goes, and I don't even really remember what we talked about or what he said because it all is lost to history. So, that's one that I just kind of had to point out because I remember being super impressed by it and really crushed that it didn't work out. But I think more good of it has come from that interview than what would have been had it been released, because it kind of pushed me to beef up our infrastructure a little bit. We now have the studio set up back at 600 West Chicago Avenue that is specifically designed now for podcasting, and that was kind of the event that really pushed me toward pitching the studio space because I was so upset that Amir did not work out. So that's mine, and kind of a little twist and wrinkle involved as far as
good one.
Yeah, that topic goes. All right, sticking kind of on the same theme, especially with personal experience, because Bill, as we've mentioned, produces the BTN Journey show, and obviously there's a lot of interesting, compelling, and sometimes heartbreaking stories that stick with you that come out of that show. So, Bill, you've met a ton of people over the years and have covered a ton of stories and put them together. What is the best Journey feature of the decade or Journey story that you've produced? I know there's been a ton, so if you can't pick just one, I would not blame you.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, a couple thoughts. One, it speaks to the wonderful team that we have on that show that we're able to find these. So, I'm a little uncomfortable when people want to put the credit on my shoulders. It's the entire team, that dig and find these stories. And two, it speaks to the quality of the people in the Big Ten Conference. And I just think that's an important thing to remember. Like, I never would have thought when I started this job that, our kind of well or bank of stories would be as deep as it is. And so we're very lucky to have that. A couple that stick out, from a personal side, one that I got to produce when we first started was on Mark Titus. Mark, I hope you're listening.
He's not. But.
We had a great time. Well, maybe he is. We had a great time filming in his apartment. He was just so great delivering lines. Like on my high school team was, Greg Oden and Daquan Cook and Mike Conley and me. He was just, I got 5 fouls. Don't make me take him home, Coach Mata at the NCAA championship game. He was just he really got it. And then to be there on a senior night when he got $1 trillion, Ohio State clinches the share of the title, he gets carried off the court. As a producer, you can't script it any better than that. We've done a number of other great stories. Darius Morris comes to mind. Was a really powerful story on him. But I think it's hard not to go back to Michigan State and the story we did on a young girl named Lacey Holsworth, and sadly her battle with cancer, and just the way that I will never ever, for as long as I live, forget when they're introducing Adrian Payne at senior night and she's standing in the tunnel and Kevin Shaw, our cameraman, is right there, and Lacey just takes this quick look to the side and then looks back to the front of the court. You almost miss it if you don't know it's coming. And that little shot of like what a college athlete can mean to someone in need sticks with me. I myself and the producer of that piece, Samantha Eisenberg, we went up to Lacey's funeral, and to be on the floor at Breslin Center, with Tom Izzo and the entire team, and I don't know, there had to be a couple thousand people there. It really shows you what college athletics can mean to a community. And that one's hard. It's a sad story. It has some positive, things that have come from it with Lacey's laces and stuff like that. But it's one that I think our team did a very good job of telling and capturing and honoring Lacey's spirit.
Yeah, and The Journey is a show that I consumed before getting to BTN. I didn't know a lot about the guts of BTN before I got to work here. But The Journey is something I always tried to follow, and the Princess Lacey story was one that I definitely watched at the time, remember seeing and remember having an impact on me. So that's definitely probably my top one as well, Bill. I joke about kind of the dramatics of the show, because I always say the best ones are the ones you can fit the piano tune into, because it's so dramatic, and it can be sad, or it can emphasize a dramatic moment. It's an iconic, in my opinion, jingle, if you will, that you guys have created. And I always tell you to get the piano in there more. So, I say it in jest, but it's true that like there's so many of those episodes that if the piano's in there, I know it's going to be something that's going to be impactful. So the Lacey one, unfortunately with how her battle turned out, obviously is sad to reflect on, but also was so well done. And another one that sticks out to me since I've worked there has been the Nigel Hayes one, kind of in a similar vein, where he visited a big Wisconsin fan, a dad who ended up also passing away from cancer, but the family was, so touched by him taking time out, and not even with the cameras around, like he would just go and visit this particular guy, and just brighten the guy's day a little bit while he was suffering from terminal cancer. So that's another one that just stuck with me, and it gave me a little insight into what kind of person Nigel Hayes was and is. So, a couple of sad ones, but definitely impactful ones. Harold, I know you consume the show as well. What do you have as far as something that The Journey has put out in the past decade?
It's kind of hard to top Lacey. That was definitely on my list, but I'm kind of going to go down the sad route as well. The Dupree McBrayer story was that definitely got emotional. That hit home. Just the fact that, his mom, like he and his mom were so tight, and she winds up passing, and you could tell he's just going through it. And you see the Nebraska basketball team come out with the shirts, and it kind of shows like the whole camaraderie of the league, and the fact that he had no idea that was happening, and he winds up getting a couple buckets important that are late in the game, and just the whole interaction with him and Jordan Murphy like after, and he's like, we got you and all that. So I thought that was a good one. Jerry Emig and his son, I thought was a good one, because you don't normally see a lot of like non-athletes or non-coaches, get stories. So kind of seeing the guy who's behind a lot of the information of, the best football team that we have in this conference, and seeing how he tries to balance everything between a high stress job at Ohio State and also dealing with his son's condition. You know, is a kind of a look into like the SID world that you don't normally see and how you have to balance all of that. And then on the fun side, you know, we got Georgie. You know, meeting Georgie. Surprised you didn't mention that one, Rube. I know that's your guy, but you know,
we see enough of Georgie. We've had him on the show. I've seen, you know, I've seen plenty of Georgie, so that's why I didn't pick it.
That's fair.
A couple other honorable mentions is, I think in our history of doing the show, we've only done a single episode on one topic 3 times, and I thought all 3 of those shows were very powerful. One was on Sam Foltz, the Nebraska punter, and reuniting with the Wisconsin kicker who would be what was my man's name from Brazil that escapes me right now. Yeah, Gaglione. And then we did one this year on Howard Moore, which of course for all of us that knew Howard at BTN was very personal and very powerful show, and we think of Howard every day. And then we did one that's a little more fun that I thought was one of our better shows ever, was on the friendship between Denzel Valentine, Bryn Forbes, and Anthony Clemens around the Michigan State-Iowa games when they were seniors, and getting their parents together and hearing them tell funny stories about how they went to prom with no dates because they didn't have anybody that could measure up to the 3 of them. And I think that was Bryn Forbes' mom who said that. She was terrific. I thought that was a fun and, you know, kind of our show at its finest.
Yeah, all good stuff, fellas. I had briefly forgotten about the Dupree McBrayer one, but that was another one. Like knowing that his mom worked, I think, at Rikers Island as a corrections officer for her whole career, and just obviously like one of the toughest ladies around, and then finally gets to retirement and gets cancer and dies. It just seemed, you know, so unfair, and was one that really stuck out to me. And also, you know, made me even a bigger fan of Tim Miles because of how he handled that, you know, as an opposing coach, honoring and giving tribute to Dupree McBrayer. So glad you brought that one up. So we got to peek behind Bill Friedman's curtain into his world a little bit. H, the next category is for you. What is your best stat of the decade, you being the stat head, the researcher at the BTN?
I'm waiting for this one. I am waiting for this one. I just want you to know. Harold, there's a lot of pressure right now, so bring it.
I feel like I'm going to disappoint you, honestly. Because, for me, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, the thing that stands out to me the most of the whole decade is 408. Like, for whatever reason, that just sticks out to me the most, and maybe it's because of how I saw it happening. The fact
is that your room in Indy room number?
No, that was Melvin going crazy in Madison on a snowy November day against Nebraska, and we're watching him, you know, hurdle tacklers down the sideline and, you know, break an NCAA record, you know, that stood for forever, and, you know, LaDainian Tomlinson congratulating him afterward, and, you know, hearing the 408 from the Wisconsin, you know, play
Matt LePay,
weeks afterward, and, you know, just the fact that became such a huge story, and trying to, you know, put perspective on it, and, you know, the fact how many other guys can, you know, run for 400 or, you know, most rushing yards in a game in Big Ten history. Like, when you get a moment like that happens in the game that you don't expect, you know, like your antennas have to go up and you're constantly looking for different stuff. And so that was when you get something like that, it really, like, you have to put your thinking cap on and figure out the best ways to tell it and try to figure out the best ways to find it. And so, you know, it's not one of those where, you know, throughout the week I'm looking and trying to figure out some stuff. The reactionary ones are kind of more fun for me. But I know there was one, I want to say Dennis Dodd wound up using it before the Ohio State-Penn State game in State College. I think it was with Haskins, so it had to be 2018. And it was like the first time that the Big Ten teams were first and second in scoring entering a matchup when they were playing each other. And, like, Dennis Dodd wound up reaching out to me and, like, used it in a piece that he had for CBS. So that was pretty cool.
That's great.
Nice, yeah. Speaking of the Ohio State, I think 2018 season, mine is Haskins throwing 50 touchdowns. I remember, Harold, you and I, when we were doing our segment, talked about, you know, maybe like week 5 or 6. Like, you think you get to 50? And we both kind of downplayed it, and then he ended up doing it. And then even like last year, Fields and getting 51 total touchdowns. I know Haskins, I think getting 50 passing is, in my opinion, more impressive, just because passing touchdowns are so much harder to come by. But 51, any way you get them is crazy. So just unbelievable production from the Ohio State quarterback position. Bill, what do you got stat-wise?
Well, to me, I can only think of stats that if I can think of them without looking them up, that means it's impressive. And to me, that would be, I think Urban Meyer, like Big Ten conference record, he lost like 6 times. Right, Harold? Am I missing it? Twice to Michigan State, once to Iowa, once to Purdue, and once to Penn State. Maybe it's 5.
I think it's just 5.
The guy lost 5 conference games in 7 years. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, I kind of forget that until it resurfaces for whatever reason and puts in perspective how dominant he was. All right, before we wrap up, we have 2 more, and they're both moment related. So they're kind of similar, and like, even if we overlap a little bit here, I don't think it's a big deal, but best single moment of the decade. And I think this can be whatever, however you want to frame it. And just for context, the final one is a moment you'll always remember where you were when it happened. So like that, I think is more of, just a significant frozen in time moment. But the first one I mentioned, the single moment, can be really anything, whether it's an outcome of a game or just the context of the situation, making things more important than they otherwise would be. So Bill, I'll go to you. What's your best just singular moment of the decade?
I mean, there are a lot to choose from. I mean, I'm trying to be a little creative here. Think of things like Devin Gardner coming over to shake JT Barrett's hand when he breaks his ankle. Think of Christian Watford's shot, just what that meant, and the celebration after.
Just did a whole show on it.
I just did. That was a powerful moment.
By the way, the Jones family enjoyed it. I talked to Clayton, Verdell's little brother, a couple weekends ago. They were very impressed.
Verdell was terrific interviewing that. Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank him for us, please. Man, best moment. That is really, really hard. I think of after Michigan State won the Big Ten basketball tournament, Harold, when Lacey came on and cut down the final strand of the net and holds it up, and our cameraman Kaline Shounts got just an amazing, amazing image of that shot. That was a powerful moment. Honestly, this past March, like driving home from Indy was a powerful moment.
Right.
Wasn't how we wanted it to end, but I'm somewhere one of those 4 probably for me. That's a lousy answer, Alex. But it's hard. I mean, I'm not sure I could pick one. Again, I don't have the emotional ties to a school the way you guys do. It might be a little easier for you guys to answer that.
Harold, what do you got?
I tried to frame this question by importance to the league, and so I went with kind of a tie, and was cheating, but Wisconsin beating Kentucky in the Final Four. Just kind of seeing that and people waiting for that matchup like all tournament long because of what happened the year before when they lost on a 3 by Aaron Harrison, and all those guys came back to kind of avenge that. And they were both 1 seeds, collision course, and Wisconsin pulls it off, and you hear jump around playing it at Lucas Oil, and knowing that Wisconsin fans are going to flood that place on Monday. That certainly stuck out. And then I think it's just that the 2015 playoffs or the 2014 season where Ohio State, winds up beating Alabama and killing Oregon to win the national title, our only national title in football and basketball for the decade. And so the fact that it just kind of all came together with Cardale, at the helm, and Zeke just going crazy, like they kind of figured out a template that worked for them. And the fact that they were able to, upset Nick Saban and then control the Heisman winner and Mariota and kind of run away with both of those games. I think those are probably the two best moments.
Harold, one more for you, because I was sitting next to you when this happened, and that was the Jalen Watts Jackson. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to ruin your thunder. I'll also throw out the Derek Pardon basket to beat Michigan and to see Northwestern make the tournament. For a kid that grew up in Evanston, that was didn't go to Northwestern. I'm not a homer, but It was that was a pretty big deal for the conference and certainly for the university.
Yeah, all good moments, gentlemen. I'm going to go with one that, was a crazy game, but it was carried more significance than just the final score. The moment that sticks out to me is kind of everything leading up to the Purdue-Ohio State 2018 football game.
Yes.
With Tyler Trent's situation,
Yes.
because, it was interesting seeing it all unfold, because I had met Tyler months
That's
before at the Big Ten tournament in March. So we had been in contact. I knew his story, and to see him get more and more attention, and then it all kind of culminate in the College Game Day story, and that particular game was honestly unbelievable, just because I saw him go from a well-known person on campus, like he was a super fan that got some maybe local publicity, but then he just turned into this nationwide hero pretty much overnight. It was unbelievable. And then I remember watching on Friday night when the preview came out, and then Saturday morning on College Game Day when they had the Tom Rinaldi feature, and he predicted that they would beat Ohio State. And it's like, oh, that's cute, but not going to happen. And then you watch the game, and it's an absolute beatdown.
Yeah.
And it's a weird mix of feelings, because you're watching the Big Ten's college football playoff chances go out the window, and it doesn't even matter. You don't care at all, because you're watching something, truly special unfold, and you just see, his dream come true, and Purdue fans rush the field, and then his popularity just skyrockets over the next couple of months. And it was just crazy to see, this kid that I had met and kind of got to know a little bit just become, like I said, a national hero. So that was just really awesome, and something that I think will be really tough to be topped in the upcoming decade, or whenever we're reflecting on this type of thing in the future. So that's pretty much all I got for that one. But I agree, Bill, that you mentioned, as far as to wrap up, a moment that maybe not necessarily is a final score, but it's something that you just kind of sit and freeze, and it's one of those always remember where you were moments when you heard about it. And for this, I did something that, not that I was in attendance for, but just kind of consuming as a regular citizen. And I know that it shouldn't even really count, because the All-Decade team was from 2010 to 19. So like you mentioned, driving home from Indy was in 2020 and kind of falls outside the purview of this, but we're going to count it anyway, because it's just been so significant and has affected our lives so much. So Harold and I had already been called back from Indy, or we had never even got to go, because just the way the travel restrictions worked out. So when March 11th happened, and that date's always going to stick with me now, because that's when the sports world shut down, it was just kind of a surreal feeling watching our Twitter feeds kind of blow up with the NBA canceling the season or suspending the season, and all the other leagues following suit. And then watching Fred Hoiberg looking like he has coronavirus on the bench, even though luckily it turned out he did not. And just everything screeching to a halt that night was just crazy. So that's something that I will always remember, and I'm going to count it in this particular parameters of the discussion, because it was just so surreal. I don't think anything will really compare. So Harold, I'll toss it over to you as far as a moment that kind of stopped you in your tracks.
Well, it's one of the most memorable plays in college football history. I don't think there's any way we can get around this one. Full disclosure, I'm in the green room. We're waiting to go on air. It's the final 10 seconds of a game in 2015. I believe it was October 17th.
It is.
Michigan's getting ready to punt the ball. I put my head down. I'm like, man, Zoo's going to lose. This hardball stuff's going to go crazy. I'm like, man, we really need a bad snap right now. That actually happened. And so I look up and I hear, oh, there's trouble with the snap. And everything after that just went in slow-mo. And so the ball gets loose. Jalen Watts-Jackson picks it up. And at this point, I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, okay, should he go down at some point? All right, should he get out of bounds at some point? Should he try to kick a field goal? And he's running closer to the end zone. I'm like, I hope he gets there before time runs out. Is there a flag? I'm thinking about all of these things as is going on, because it's just completely playing in slow motion in my head. And he scores, and I'm still looking for the flag. Never comes. So then I remember just the absolute roar going throughout the building. People that were in the green room running into the hallway because they couldn't believe what they saw. Just complete pandemonium everywhere. throughout the entire building, mosh pits happening because they couldn't believe what was going on. And it's the whole time I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. And knowing that that moment is going to live on forever in college football history, and for it to be that game, that opponent, that's gonna, I don't know how you could top that in terms of like what just happened kind of moment.
I'm going to piggyback on that, H. First of all, you Michigan State fans lead a charmed existence. Like, I hear you reflecting on all these moments of the last decade, and, you know, it'll be hard to top the 2020s will be hard to top the 2010s as far as just like all these moments. So first of all, jealous on that front. But yeah, I have a funny story about that play, and I'd forgotten about this until just now when you guys mentioned it. But it was my senior year of college, and I was actually in Chicago at a friend's place, and we were watching the game, kind of following it throughout, like just having it on in the background. And we just happened to head out for our, you know, wherever we were going that night. This is in Lincoln Park near the DePaul campus. And we headed out the door right before the trouble with the snap play. And we just thought the game was over. And there happens to be a restaurant and bar that was a Michigan State affiliated bar just like outside, like down the street. And so we were walking down Fullerton Avenue to go wherever we were going. This bar is just going crazy. And I'm like, I walked by this earlier. This is a Michigan State bar. Did they win the game? You know, like what happened? So I found out that way that play had happened. And I kicked myself for not staying in front of the TV for like one more minute. I didn't see it live, but it's just crazy.
Well, Harold, I'm glad you brought it up because I was in the green room with you, and I'll never forget just the looks of shock on everyone's face. You know, I mean, you had as a Michigan State alum, you had a little bit of a rooting interest, but you know, our guys are all pros there who are on camera, and they were just shocked because it was just such an amazing ending. And my thoughts after I got over the shock was, oh my God, we have our Journey cameras there, and I knew they were working, you know, to get all the reaction and hopefully in the locker room. So I waited the right amount of time, and I called one of our cameramen who happens to be a Michigan State alum, and I was like, "Tell me you got the shot." And he's like, "Oh yeah, we got it." And I was just like, "That's as happy as you can be." And he's like, "Not only that, you know, Kevin, who's our cameraman, Kevin Shaw, he was on the Michigan State sideline preparing to get their dejected reaction at the end of the game. And what he ended up getting was really the only shot of the Michigan State bench. The network cameras weren't positioned. And so we have really the only reaction shot. It's a great shot where he runs behind the players into the dog pile in the corner of the end zone there. So that was just a cool that I'll never forget that moment, Harold. But I'll try to give you another one for me just to kind of put a bow on all this. But 2011 Big Ten tournament for me was, I started with Taylor Battle. I'm going to end with him. You know, they knew they had to make it, and they'd been really kind to us as a show, The Journey. And so we were in every pregame locker room, and we're kind of vested with them at this point. Like, the farther they go, the better it is for the show. We're getting more access. We're getting all this. And they win that game. And I remember asking their SID, Brian Seacrest at the time, Stretch, I said, can we go back to the hotel with you? And he's like, we're staying at the Omni, meet us there. So, you know, this is like the fourth game of the day or third game of the day. We're exhausted. My cameraman, or the second game, it was Saturday. And we go over and we wait for them. And I'm like, where's the bus? Where's it taking forever? I'm almost pulled the plug. And it was like, let's just go. No. And then here they come right off the bus. And we get in right behind Coach DeChellis. And we had no idea, but there was a huge Penn State contingent there. And they lined the little entranceway. And at the Omni, you may remember it from when Wisconsin beat Kentucky. They had that great shot of all the people. Well, it wasn't that big, but they had enough people up there. And to see the joy on Taylor Battle's face, knowing that he knew he was going to make the NCAA tournament, as he walked in and he's waving his hand and they're singing the "I Believe We Will Win" song. And I'm right there. I'm like literally in the line with our cameraman. I still get chills thinking about that. And every time I watch that footage, it brings a smile to my face. That's what our show should be, is to capture behind the scenes, things people don't see. Nobody would have seen that then. Maybe now with cell phones, they would. With more cameras. At that time, there wasn't a ton of cameras on your phones. And that was just an amazing, amazing moment. And one I'll always remember. So glad they made the tournament that year.
Well said, Bill. Good stuff, fellas. If anyone stuck with us through this hour plus discussion, shout out to them. But even if nobody did, I don't care, because I had a lot of fun just chatting with you guys and reminiscing. And and discussing some of our favorite moments and, kind of remembering just how fun all this is and hoping that we get back to it sooner rather than later, because we took it for granted a little bit. I know I did. I guess I won't speak for you guys, but kind of hearing all these things again kind of snapped me out of this day-to-day, repetitive, monotonous life we've been living the last 3.5 months, and it's making me hungry to get back to normal life. So I appreciate you guys talking sports with me. I feel very lucky to do this job and get to consume some of these moments from those angles. And just appreciate it. And I hope everyone listening enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed talking about it.
Thanks, Alex. It was great. And I think I always, one of the things that I think about people I know work in the industry is they have terrific memories, and both of you do. And it's great to hear your memories and remember all these great moments that we've been charmed to get to cover and get paid to do for our vocation.
Yeah, fully agree. Definitely happy to be on. Always good to be on and talk. Some memories and talk sports in general. It's always fun. Just thinking about that 2015 game and everything that went on with that moment. It was kind of fun reliving all of that and reliving how a college football Saturday works. And if you guys want to have some fun, the college football Reddit, if you just look up, whoa, he has trouble with the snap, there's literally schools from all over the place that just fill in Sean McDonough's call, like one word at a time. You could be a Clemson fan, an LSU fan, an Auburn fan, an Alabama fan, and then you just see Michigan fans like, not again. And so but that's what college sports does. And the fact that we could talk about these memories and stuff like that, it definitely makes me, miss the sports, and I'm ready to get back.
Michigan's got a lot of good memories too.
For sure.
The Anthony Carter touchdown from way back, that's they got some good memories too to put on the old CFB Reddit, excuse me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I kind of forgot this is a Michigan geared podcast with Stauskas on, so I think we've lost all the Wolverine fans by now. But anyway, guys, we'll do it again, if we're lucky enough in 2030, and we'll run it back. So thanks, fellas.
Put it on my calendar right now, Alex. I'll be there.
Zoom meet, ready for it.
Thanks again to Nick, Harold, and Bill for joining the show. Like I said before that last segment, a lot of stuff to get to, but it was a lot of fun talking about it with those guys. And, if you have time to kill on the long weekend, give it a listen, and I don't think you'll regret it. I think it was a pretty fun interview pretty fun pair of interviews to conduct, and I hope you agree that they're fun to listen to as well. Have a happy 4th of July weekend, everybody. We'll continue to roll out podcasts over the summer break, I guess we can call it, since there still are no sports in session, and there wouldn't be any college sports anyway this time of year. So we'll probably slow the pace down a little bit, just with things slowing down, but we'll continue to roll episodes out at a semi-regular cadence, so stay tuned. Thanks once again to everyone for listening. Thanks as always to Julie Bronder for producing this show. Please review and rate us on the podcast platform of your choice, and please remember that you can watch our interviews with our primary guests like Nik Stauskas on BTN's YouTube channel now on the Take 10 podcast. So go ahead and subscribe on YouTube to Big Ten Network and watch these interviews in their entirety. They are a good time to kind of see the guests react and answer the questions as they unfold. So do that. And like I said, have a great weekend, have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you soon here on the Take 10 podcast.